Morning. About this time last year, in the NBA playoffs, there was a player named Tyrese Halliburton. And he played for the Indiana Pacers, and they were ranked like fourth in the East, something like that. But he led that team to the finals against the best team in the league, the Oklahoma City Thunder. He got him all the way to Game 7. But he was injured. Someone's physically injured, you could see it. You could see him limp. Maybe he had a calf injury. Gets to that Game 7. Starts out hot, hits 3 3-pointers, they're winning. He's in the game, they're winning. He's out of the game, they're losing. And then his Achilles snaps. I don't know if you've seen that before, but that's a very visible injury. You can see that tendon go up under the skin. You can see him hit the ground, pound on it, pain and frustration, and you know he's done. Not playing anymore. When someone has a physical injury, we kind of understand. You're not going to run as fast if you're an amputee. You're not going to jump as high. We knew he was playing hard. We still wanted to play through it. We still wanted him to win, right? Once that snaps, you know he's done. He's not going to play anymore. I like to say we understand. If you wanted him to win, you're still not happy about it. When someone's brain is what's injured, you don't see it. It's not visible at a glance. We don't treat it the same. We want people to push through it. We want them to be okay. We're talking about a developmental issue, talking about a mental illness, brain damage. Well, you should outgrow that. Everybody's fat sometimes. You got strength, just use your strength to make up for the deficits. A bone that's 99% unbroken is still a broken bone. It's not going to support the weight. It's not going to do its job. There are experts that can tell you, measure, testing, research, what's wrong with the brain, why it's not functioning the way you expect it to. They can show you causal links between what's wrong with the brain and how someone behaves, why they don't fit in, why they don't function the way someone who doesn't have those deficits functions. But do we really need that? It's not true that we don't know when something's wrong with someone. You know that someone ain't right. They don't pick up on the social cues. They can't solve the problems they should be able to solve with the intelligence they have. They can't put themselves in someone else's shoes the way everyone else does, the way you have to. Tanner's injury actually began before he was born. His mother, God bless her, Melissa Horner, was working as a stripper when she was pregnant. And one of the ways she was able to get on stage and do her job was to drink alcohol. If you're exposed to alcohol prenatally before you're born, it doesn't have to be a lot. It can be in the first trimester. We know now that if it's just in the wrong days of gestation, it will cause permanent injuries. Now, Melissa continued throughout Tanner's life to this day to have issues with substance abuse with the law. So she was not there for him a lot. Kind of in and out of her care. His dad, unfortunately, had similar issues, more legal, more substance abuse, and he wasn't there much either. So he was raised by Jackie Harbison. Jackie is a wonderful grandmother, and she's done the best she can with him. She had him tested at a young age, and the school determined he had Asperger's, which is now considered a form of autism spectrum disorder. Now, autism ranges from there's some mild quirks, some social issues, things like that, all the way up to being unable to function. That's why they call it a spectrum. Tanner received services throughout his school life until he was 18. Autism is one of those things, though, that you're taught skills to deal with. It doesn't go away. It's not something you outgrow. A lot of people, as they get to adulthood, have learned skills and are able to cope. You're going to hear evidence about Tanner's autism. Tanner, unfortunately, has also suffered various mental illnesses throughout his life, been diagnosed, he's received treatment for, and some of those are ongoing. We will hear about those and what issues he has there. And finally, you will hear evidence that Tanner at some point, presumably during his developmental years, was exposed to a massive amount of lead. Testing shows that he has 24 times the amount of lead that a person his age should have in his bones. You don't have to be a scientist or a doctor to know that lead has terrible effects on the brain and on the body. Why does this matter? Well, remember back in the beginning when we were in the group, the judge told you, the state told you, the defense told you how important the presumption of innocence is. How important the state's burden of proof is. You have to prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. Tanner has done what he can today by pleading guilty, accepting that he's going to spend the rest of his life in prison. Now, I understand I have a different perspective on this because I've represented a lot of defendants who won't do that. The evidence is overwhelming. The state said it's terrible. I hate that we all have to sit through it together. But all across America today, there are defendants that are relying on that presumption of innocence and that burden of proof in their cases to try to get a non-guilty verdict, no matter how the evidence is stacked against them. You even heard in that group 40 years that we did that the state suggested we might try to get a non-capital verdict in this case, a lesser included offense. We're not going to do any of that. So where does that leave you? We've already talked about it. That's why we spent the time in individual voir dire going over everything. You've taken that oath now, that second oath we talked about, to follow the law. And the law in Texas never requires a death penalty. The law in Texas is always satisfied with life without parole.
Objection to argument, Your Honor.
Life without parole is a terrible punishment. You are being asked to use your personal moral judgment to apply that special issue number 1 to the evidence that you do here. It's going to take a while. It'll be from both sides. But remember, that's whether there's a probability that the defendant will commit criminal acts of violence that constitute a continuing threat to society. We believe when you heard the evidence, you'll realize that the type of damage that Tanner had to his brain actually makes him a good candidate for structure and rules. It's probably what he's always needed. And when he goes to prison, he will be under threat. He will not be the one threatening you. If you find beyond a reasonable doubt that he is a continuing threat to society, then you'll use your personal moral judgment to consider that second question. Whether or not there's a sufficient mitigating circumstance or circumstances to warrant a life sentence instead of a death sentence. We've talked about that already too. What is a sufficient mitigating circumstance from the evidence? It's whatever you find sufficient to justify a life sentence. Remember, you don't have to agree on why he isn't a continuing threat to society, and you don't have to agree on what a mitigating circumstance is. When you do see this evidence, The break is obvious. The only way to ignore that damage came, or that break came from the damage that was already there, is just like with Halliburton. If you ignore that his calf was already injured. That's how an Achilles tendon snaps. We still expected him to push through and win. We still expected Tanner to push through and be a father and be a productive citizen and be all the things that we wanted him to be. But he just didn't do it. So what I'm asking you to do is to not close your eyes to what you see about who Tanner is and how that applies to those two special issues. Not close your ears and not listen, not pretend that damage to the brain isn't real. Speak up, fulfill your oath, sentence him to life without parole.